Hello there. What is going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of Double Crit. This is the first double critical episode that's going to feature X-Wing. That's going to be all about X-Wing. We're going to be talking about X-Wing today. Today's subject is going to be X-Wing 3rd Edition. Can it happen? What would that be like? So that's going to be a very interesting thing to talk about today. But also, I've got to do a shout out to our sponsor today, Luxury Playstyle. You definitely check out luxuryplaystyle.com. They have some of the most amazing tokens that you have ever seen. Love these tokens. There we go. I have my double critical in front. You're going to save... Here we go. Let me get out of the way. You're going to save 15% if you use code Crabbok VIP. So be sure to check out luxuryplaystyle.com. Also, if you guys are signed up, you may have seen some news, some recent announcements that just broke today. Legion tokens are coming to Luxury Playstyle's lineup, and yours truly will be collaborating directly with them to help design these tokens. So there's going to be a whole lot more tokens in the pipe. There's a whole lot more coming. There's a lot of stuff, and as soon as I can talk about it, I will definitely be talking more. So stay tuned. I'll be talking more about all of this stuff. So definitely check out these. One of the great things about these is they're actually usable in lots of different games. You know, I use a lot of the Keyforge tokens already for any games that require damage. I use the shield tokens from X-Wing in Legion right now, and of course, orders of $35 or more are going to get a free Crabbok lightsaber nunchuck token thrown in there that can be used to mark critical hits in X-Wing for the C, damage, you know, for the 5 on the other side. And you can use a C token in just about anything. You can mark a commander in Legion. You can use it as your flagship where your commander is in Armada even. So very cool stuff. Be sure to check out Luxury Playstyle. So with that being said, big thanks to everybody who's spending your Sunday night with us today. We are going to be talking about X-Wing. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with X-Wing 3rd Edition, because I know a lot of people had gripes when 2nd Edition came out, for example. So that's a big thing, and the idea is like they could never do a 3rd Edition after all this backlash that they had with 2nd Edition. And I kind of beg to differ. And so one of the approaches I want to talk about today is, you know, how would they do that after the backlash? I want to talk about some potential changes that they could make that AMG has, you know, since they have that all in their basket now, and you know, some kind of adjustments, some that are just straight up changes, and some that are just like course corrections. Jason says, "I want that Imperial Raider 2nd Edition already." I hear you. I'm surprised that they've never released those. I wonder how long they're going to hold those in the warehouse for. You know, a lot of places don't have Imperial Raiders. I guess the only way you can get them is order them directly from, you know, just one of the few retailers that has them left. So yeah. So hello there to everybody that's just joining us. We are going to be having a good time tonight. I am in my X-Wing outfit. Figured I could do this. I don't have to wear headphones today, so I can't usually dress up for too many of my streams because a lot of times I'm talking to somebody else and I need to hear them. And so, you know, maybe I should invest in some wireless ear pods or something like that. That might be something that happens eventually. We need an upgrade. Andrew says we need an upgrade pack for X-Wing fighters. Not enough in the upgrade pack at all. That's an interesting point. That would be. You know, I think they should do more with upgrade cards. You know, and that kind of leads me into 3.0 too. It's like, you know, do you think that they would ever consider doing away with upgrades coming with ships and just having upgrade card packs? You know, like once a year, just have an upgrade card pack for that year. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm not sure exactly how you would do something like that. I think what you would have to do is you'd have to say, like, all right, all the new tech and all the new mechanics and synergies and upgrade types and, you know, oh, we're going to have a missile boat, so we need some new missiles and things like that. All that stuff that's going to come out, you need to release all those upgrades up front. And then the ships that focus on them would have to come out throughout the year. So people get the upgrade card and then like, oh, here's this new ship. Oh, good. I really wanted a ship that could use both tech and double missiles or whatever. So that would be pretty cool. That would be like kind of a course correction, not really a big change. That would just be like an easy little tweak. So let's talk about X-Wing 3rd Edition. First thing is there's different ways that they could go about actually doing it, because let's look at the 2nd edition backlash. A lot of people were like, wait, you're telling me I can't play with my own stuff anymore? You're telling me I can't play with my 1.0 stuff anymore? And of course, I mean, that wasn't true from a certain point of view. Of course, you could still play with your 1.0 stuff, but you also need opponents to play with, and who's gonna really, are you gonna show up to a game store and everybody's playing 1.0 still? You're probably not, right? So that's so it does kind of effectively kill 1.0, at least as a wide scene. It kind of turns it into a tiny game that only very few people will end up playing. So if you and your local crew were like diehards for 1.0, then you can still keep playing 1.0, but you're not going to get anything new for it. If they took upgrades out of ship packs, Mark says, if they took upgrades out of ship packs and didn't decrease the price of ship packs, that would cause a lot of backlash. I don't know if it would cause as much as you might think, Mark, because they did something like that even more. Like, all right, let's face it, the cost of printing a card is pretty negligible, right? Like you're talking like half a cent, maybe, like virtually nothing. So removing cards doesn't really reduce their costs at all. But in the case of Armada, with their latest, like with the Clone Wars waves, they took a number of things out. They took, dials out. They took command dials. And they took speed dials out of those packs. And that's plastic. And the price actually went up for all of that stuff. But I mean, people are still buying it, as soon as it comes out. So I don't know if, people might complain a little bit, but I don't know if it's going to rise to the level of where people don't buy it. And I think from like a business decision, that's one of the things that they have to think about. Well, can we do this? I know people will complain, but if people will complain yet, reluctantly still buy it, then that's a win. And I think that's what would happen if they did something like that. Because to me, it also really depends on how they do upgrade card packs. If you're going to get like 2 or 3 of every single upgrade for the whole year in each year's upgrade card pack, well, that could be a cost savings. And how many times have you been tempted to buy an extra copy of a ship because you want that extra missile or that extra pilot talent or something like that? And so it could potentially be a cost savings measure as well. That's a thought. There's a lot of different ways that they could run something like that. Jason says if they did take the cards out, I think it's out, yeah. Wouldn't they lose money from the aspect of some people buying across the aisle just for some cards? Maybe, but they've said with 2.0, it's like one of the hallmarks is they don't want you to have to buy across the aisle. And they may put something in one faction for now, but it's gonna come out for the other faction also. And I think nowadays a lot of people are also just willing to print their stuff or proxy or play online. I mean, this whole past year and a half, there's been a lot of people playing online, TTS and Vassal or Fly Casual and that sort of thing. So I mean, I don't know if they're worried about losing that much money from people who buy across the aisle. I mean, those people would probably still buy, like, if you could just buy the ships you wanted, it might actually be more attractive to new players. You might be gaining more new players that way. I guess it just really depends. So yeah, I think that would be a kind of a cool thing that they could potentially do. But I want to talk about how you actually put out a 3rd edition. And I think it's doable. I think honestly, if you're ever going to do it, this is the best time to do it, because you have a good excuse. Like if FFG would have said, man, you know what, we did good with 2nd edition on these 3 things, but these 3 things we really needed to fix. Crap, can we fix them now? It's too late. We already caused a whole bunch of backlash with 2nd edition, right? So it's like FFG couldn't have made a 3rd edition. But AMG is a whole different company, so I feel like they could at least with a straight face say, hey guys, brand new game, just fell into our lap. We want to fix these things. and they don't lose any face over it because, well, they're not the ones that broke those things. All right, so I feel like they could get away with it. So I think this is the best timing to do it. But I'm taking this off, by the way. This is itching me right now. So hold on. I'm taking this off. Oh my goodness. I could not be an X-wing. Oh, I'd have to fly with the chin strap removed if I was actually an X-wing pilot. I'd probably be a B-wing pilot though. B-wing pilot instead, because B-wing pilots get to drink. All right, so that's so much better. That's better on the whole face and everything. All right. So how do you do it? I think one of the ways you do is you take a page out of what Armada did, because I don't think you want to come out and just have it like 3.0, because they haven't even finished the reprints for 2.0 yet, and so that kind of constitutes a problem. Now you could get away with changing packaging. I would, if you do change packaging, I would do it very, very slightly to coincide with AMG's already going to have to change packaging anyway, because all the stuff that AMG creates isn't going to have that FFG logo on the back of the box. So you already have opportunity to change the boxes. So I would change them very slightly. I'd still have them be mostly black. I might add like a little bit of flair of like an extra color on the corner or something like that. I might do something to that effect. So a minor change in box art, but you still want it to be identifiable and recognizable as second edition. But what I would do with the big thing is I wouldn't call it third edition. And what I mean by that is I would say, like from AMG's standpoint, I would say something along the lines of, hey everybody, you know, like so as we inherited this game and we began to look at it and thinking about where to go next, we realized there were a couple of issues that we wanted to correct before we, you know, plotted a new course. And those issues would be X, Y, and Z. Like maybe that, you know, like I'm going to talk about some of those things that I think they should be. But what I'd like to see is for some changes, similar to how Armada did, like a soft, like a 1.5. Didn't, you know, all your old stuff was fine or whatever, and it's fine to have errata. They've already done errata with Hera. You know, they've already done errata. So that's no problem. But you know, I think what you want is you want it to be kind of a rules update or like a big new FAQ document that makes everything from 1.0 or from 2.0 compatible. And, you know, so all that whole, you kind of have to keep that base plan in effect if you can. So with all of these things, these specific changes that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about some different ways that I think that they could probably do that. And starting with, by the way, acrylic tokens, acrylic bases, right? Like we need a rebranding of like a reprinting of the acrylic bases, like the small ships, the small, medium, and large, especially the mediums, because those have never come out, and we put them in all the same colors we used to have them in before. Like that would be a really like nice thing to put out there. But yeah, Timothy says, I would love to see each month focus on one faction and drop pilot upgrades in the off months as card packs. That's I get the sentiment there, but I think, you know, asking for a release each month is not going to happen, at least anytime soon. I think, you know, you're likely to get a wave each year right now, just because things have slowed down so much. We're getting ready to experience a whole lot of slowdown, and we've already started it. So I would love for things to get ramped up again, but I just don't think they'll ever get back to where we're getting new stuff constantly. I think we're going to have a lot more slow periods where people have to get used to like a lack of news coming out. You know, I've already kind of been in that mode for a while. So that's why we do things like the double crit, because we can speculate and talk and just kind of catch up and do wish listing and things like that. So I think if you were to actually do a full 3.0, I think you'd lose a lot of people. I think the faith would be gone. So if you just said X-Wing 3rd edition, boom, I think at best you'd have the slang of X-Wing 3rd edition. If they did want to actually throw 2nd edition completely out of the, like throw it away, I think their best plan would be to just get rid of it. Don't call it X-Wing anymore, and don't call it an edition. Like almost call it a whole different name. Call it like Dogfight or something like that. Or call it like Alphabet Squadron, the game, or something like that. And then just have it be like almost marketed as like a whole new game. because otherwise, you know, I just think if you did a whole nother edition, you'd lose so many people. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure how you do it. Now, granted, this could coincide with, you know, like a racing game. I know a lot of people have been talking about wanting a pod racing game, and that's a possibility. But I think if they took like a cue from Star Wars Resistance, how they had like those rings and the racers and stuff like that, and they made like a Star Wars Resistance game that was also fully compatible with X-Wing, and that could be like maybe a springboard to launching like a new way of, you know, releasing products, that could coincide with it. But I think basically that your best bet of getting to a third edition is just a major rules change in the form of a new FAQ that people would kind of call a soft, like a 2.5, as opposed to a full-blown third edition. They did that with Armada, had a lot of success with it. They didn't fix everything, but when you have a living rules document, you can easily kind of make adjustments. Some are harder to make than others. So let's talk about those specific adjustments, because I want to get into the meat of the topics, of the specific things that I think that they should touch on if they're going to do a third edition or a 2.5, so to speak, because I think there's a lot of really cool options. So Timothy says, I would love to see no defense dice, just like Armada. Whew, I don't know if you're going to see that next week. That's a big change. It's certainly possible, but that's a big change. You know, there could be ways to do something like that. Like, I'll take a stab at it, right? You give, instead of rolling defense dice, like, you still want to be able to use all the same components without having to, like, buy new stuff. So instead of a ship having rolling defense dice, whatever their agility value is, they get that many, like, green dice just on their card at the beginning of the game or whatever. They can spend, or maybe they have just tokens for that, and they can spend those to reduce damage by 1, you know, and then once they're gone, they're gone, you know. So this way the high agility ships at least have a little more survivability, and the low agility ships still don't, and you can still use the same cards, you know. You just make the number mean something else, so the same printed material still would work in both versions, you know. That's kind of an idea that yeah, you could apply going forward, but that's just off the top of my head. Let's see. But Badger says, I would love to have an asymmetrical warfare game with a battle where it's like 3 versus 2, 2 versus 1, 1v1, and all combat styles like air, infantry, space battles, and land conquest or territory control. Yeah, I mean, you might want to check out Star Wars Rebellion. Star Wars Rebellion is a very asymmetrical game where, you know, the Empire is like dominating the whole galaxy, and the Rebels just have to accomplish some objectives and just kind of hold out until, like, they're not going to beat the Empire in a balanced military conflict. They might win, you know, in 1 or 2 smaller incursions, and those might be the ones they need to develop sympathy throughout the rest of the galaxy. You know, so like those things are possible, and that's a great game, by the way. Granted, that's a board game and not a minis game. We got a super chat from Pow. Thank you for the super chat, Pow. I appreciate you showing some support for the channel. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But I am the new Bleed Green. I have changed my account. Wait, are you really Bleed Green? You changed the picture too. All right. Well, thanks Bleed Green, Pal. Thank you for throwing some love to the channel. Welcome back. Is that Chewbacca as your avatar? I'm not sure who that is. But or wait, it's probably Pow though from Rogue One, right? Is that who the inspiration for the name? I don't know. All right, but we are. Let's see. If they announce a 3rd edition for X-Wing, I'd call it quits. Too much money, time, and effort invested in 1st and 2nd edition to do it all over again. I'd just go full bore on Armada. Well, hey man, now you're trying to don't threaten me with a good time. Armada is a fantastic game, but yeah, I think if they announced a 3rd edition, a lot of people would be doing kind of what you just said. It would be just time to throw in the towel. You know, maybe there'll be a rise in videos of watch me melt my entire X-Wing collection, you know, and things like that. You know, I still get, you know, a lot of hate and stuff, and if you guys follow me on Twitter, somebody said something the other day about, like, congratulations, you are responsible for destroying this once great game. And I'm like, wow, Wow, that's a new one. I didn't know I was responsible for anything, let alone, toppling this, mammoth of a game. That's you overestimate my my value, apparently, but that's funny. I think that you're right. So I think that the way to go is, if you wanted to fix some things, work them into a major rules overhaul, and don't label it a third edition. I mean, they do rules updates all the time anyway, but I'm talking about some major updates. So John Smith says, knowing that Asmodee is very focused on profitability, what demographic are they not reaching that a third edition would reach? Well, that's a really good question. So that's where I kind of hope to fix some of these things. I can only give you my perspective, but as somebody who plays now 3 different, miniatures games, and some people have a lot of miniatures games. Some people have, especially 40K players and stuff like that. You've got all these armies and you got all this stuff. Like, if you can getting ready to play, there's a whole lot that goes into playing. You have to grab all your armies. You have to grab the cards. You have to get the minis, the bases, the dials, the maneuver dials, all the upgrade cards, and all of that stuff. And that's always, it's not a big deal if you play one game or if you play just one faction. But if you have a little bit of everything, if you've got a really big collection, it can take a lot longer to go through all of that. I run into problems kind of like that when I'm playing Legion or Armada. A lot of times I've got these big thick books full of upgrade cards. And that's why when X-Wing came out with 2nd edition, once the Clone Wars hit, I decided to just focus on one faction instead of all of them, because I couldn't keep up with 7 factions. So I think one of the things that something like that would, that some of these fixes would do would be to kind of address some of the setup and teardown, because I think one of X-Wing's advantages is that it's a quicker game. It's a smaller, faster, quicker game that can still give you plenty of tactical depth and also work well on the tournament scene. So I would be looking to kind of enhance that. So one of the things that, the biggest one I want to talk about is in my opinion, the number one missed opportunity with going from 1st to 2nd edition, and that's keeping individual, not having pilot upgrades. I think that's the number one missed opportunity in X-Wing 2nd edition, is that they still kept, a Wedge Antilles card and a Luke Skywalker card and and Biggs Darklighter card and all of these X-Wing pilots as their own card that have their own cardboard chit, and they're all double-sided cardboard chits, which is honestly pretty annoying, because when you've got 10,000 cardboard chits, trying to find the one Wedge Antilles is a nightmare. And this is probably not a big deal for anybody who's got a smaller collection. But if you have a larger collection, I have these big 5-gallon bags full of all my cardboard, and multiples of them. So digging through, and I tried to sort them out by faction and everything like that, but it takes forever. And it's just, and imagine having all that for 1st edition, and then 2nd edition comes out. I threw away all of my 1st edition stuff. Because it was overload. It was way too much. And I'm I never want to throw it. It's that means I cannot play 1st edition anymore. I threw it in the garbage. Actually, I think I threw it in the recycling because it was cardboard. But still, it's gone. It's been pulp, it's been pressed into pulp, and, it's been in your recyclable toilet paper and stuff like that. So, it's the circle of life. Which is kind of weird, I think people are probably wiping their butts with my old X-Wing 1.0 stuff. But so that's one of the things that really it frustrated me, number one. So what I would like to see is, and this is where Armada excels, and that's why I thought for sure with a 2nd edition for X-Wing they would have done this, because Armada has just a ship, and then they have the officer on board the ship that kind of, there's usually just one officer slot. Though in Armada is a little different, because there are some ships that have more than one, but very, very few. But that would be, the way that it should be with X-Wing. And there were a lot of homebrew kind of things, even back in the early to mid days of 1.0, of people saying, well, why don't we just have an X-Wing ship card that has those stats, and then you have a pilot card. That's a pilot upgrade. And you pick which pilot you're going to run. And if you don't run a pilot card, that's like running like your cheapest version. Or maybe you just have to run a pilot card because what if they want to make a cheaper version? So that would be something that they should do. Now, here's the problem. I said instead of going with a full-blown 3rd edition, you kind of just make it a big rules update. So you do call it like a 2.5. So if you decide to go with just generic ship cards, and here, because here the rules are already kind of support it. There is nothing in the game that needs there to be a unique cardboard chit for a specific pilot card, right? There's no pilot that has a completely different firing arc that's printed on the thing, or there's no pilot that's like, oh well, if you're running Luke in an X-wing, that's fine. You're going to use this pilot. But if you're running Wedge, well, he's now a medium base, so you need a whole different piece of cardboard for Wedge. Like, there's no mechanical reason in the game for you to have a different piece of cardboard from one pilot to the next. They're all identical, minus the little printed initiative number and then their actual name. Jason or Jaso says he's got no audio. If you guys can hear me, let me know in the chat. Because I think it might just be you. Yeah, Jason has audio, and everybody's been hearing me all along, so it might just be you, buddy. But yeah, what's going on, JJ? How you doing, bud? So we're talking about 3.0. So I think there's no reason to have specific pilots as their own ship. So I think you should have a ship card, have a pilot upgrade. All right, that fixes that. And then all you need, but you would have to have like generic cardboard inserts for Now, the reason I say you don't need this, if I was doing a full 3.0, I would reprint all the cardboard. But since they're all the same, you could this could be a soft at 2.5 and just say, you know what, it doesn't matter, just use generic cardboard. Just ignore the cardboard from now on. Because here's the thing, you have to mark every pilot with a number anyway. So if I'm running multiple, Red Squadron veterans or multiple Academy pilots or whatever, I'm marking them. I can only tell the difference on them because of the number. It's on the card, and that goes to here, and that's also the number I use for target locks, right? So you're supposed to mark every ship anyway, which further, and that used to be the only reason that it was helpful to have Wedge versus Luke in an X-Wing, because you could look and see, oh, this one says Wedge, this one says Luke, but there's no reason to even read the name on those cards because you just look at the number, and the number corresponds to your, the token you put on your card. So that's really all you should ever need. So really, that's kind of my point there. Is like, you just use any base, as long as it's got the right printed firing arc, which is going to be the same for 100% of ships. But yeah. Anyway. Yeah, some other people saying, you love the game, but if it was a 3.0, you'd be out. I think a lot of people would be out with you. I think that's why you. So if you guys are just tuning in, basically I'm saying no to a 3.0, but they could still accomplish what they want to accomplish with a 3.0 if they don't call it 3.0. If they just call it like a new FAQ, like a major rules overhaul, and you could even call it a 2.5. Or something like that. Because Armada did that. Instead of doing a second edition for Armada, they just did like a 1.5. Didn't require people to go and rebuy anything. But there was optional purchases. Like, hey, if you want to get this new upgrade card collection that has all the reprints and errata, then you could do that. But you didn't have to at all. I think that's what they should do with like a 2.5. So my first big change is, pilots now are upgrades. And of course, if you have your Luke Skywalker card already, you just treat that as Luke Skywalker pilot as the pilot in the ship. So you don't have to buy anything new. And of course, it'll cost the same. It'll all be costed the same. And since all the points are through the app, you can go ahead and do that. By the way, what I would love to do too, if I was doing a 3.0, is I would print the upgrades and the points on the cards again, with the understanding, yes, they can change, but here's at least their starting point. Because I feel like not printing the points is almost like a cop-out. It means, to me, it's like saying, hey, we don't really have to play test this much. We don't have to balance this that much because we can always fix it later. And to me, that's a cop-out. I really prefer having everything on the card. I don't want to have to be like, like when they give you a preview, you have no idea what it's going to be like, because you're like, oh well, this looks like a crappy ship. Oh, but if it's only 20 points and I can fit 1,000 of them in a list or whatever, well now it's great. So all of those things matter, you know. And granted, I know the points are going to change, but they're not going to change so much that like Dash Rendar's over 100 points at launch, but then he's down to 15 points a year later. Like, it's not going to change that much. So the points should be to give you a good idea of what the starting point was. Like the way Legion does it right now is perfect. You know, the points change, that's fine, and they're updated online, and there's a PDF or in the RRG or whatever. They don't change very much though, because it's not a cop out for them to not balance and playtest. And you know. And I don't know. So just to me, I'm afraid that it would be, and with printed costs, would the 6-month balance be more necessary? Maybe. I don't know. So that's a tough question for me to answer, because this past year, you know, we don't have all these world championship events and stuff. Like you have your TTS kind of events and things like that. But you know, it's harder to really gauge the meta when only people who have TTS or Vassal or whatever are actually playing, right? And so you're not getting the same competition, you're not getting the same people, and so it's, you know, you're getting a smaller subset of data, and so it can give you an idea, but it's I imagine that you're going to get a lot better data when you're having, you know, getting back to the old routine where you have your primes or your regionals, your store champs, and then your regionals, primes, and, you know, your nationals and your worlds, and, you know, you're getting all of these big tournaments, and you're seeing what's really dominating on a much larger scale. You know, because there could be some great lists out there that just aren't getting run in tournaments because the people, you know, maybe don't like I use myself as an example. I generally don't like playing on TTS or Vassal or anything like that. So, you know, that's, you know, although I will use Fly Casual, because that one makes it really, really easy. So yeah, that's my one little caveat for all of that. But yeah, so that's probably the biggest missed opportunity for me. But the next one is a little bit more weird, and this is one. So I'm going to move forward a little bit to the next big change that I would make, and this one's a little bit wilder. It would also aid in setup, because I want to be able to say, oh, I'm flying an X-Wing. Okay, good. I just need to have, like, I get one X-Wing. I've already got a base in there. Good. I just grab my pilot card. I'm good to go. I don't have to go digging for, you know, the right piece of cardboard. Well, one thing I still have to dig for is that movement dial. So here's my plan. Here's the thought, at least. What if movement dials got to change? And what I mean by that is, what if instead of having specific ship movement dials, and again, this could be backwards compatible with 2.0 from a 2.5 or 3.0 or whatever. What if, like, new 2.5 movement dials, enhanced movement dials, were now just generic? It's just a movement dial. Okay. Maybe it has the faction on the back. Maybe it has a clip-on faction so you can change it out. What if it's just a movement dial? Has every movement that exists that's printed on it. Every type of move. All right? All the ones, all the twos, all the threes, all the fours, and all the fives. And they're all printed, instead of, not white, not red, but they're all printed maybe in like a white outline. Like they're all hollow. And you reference the back of the ship card, and that tells you what their movement actual profile is. So if I do a 2 straight, I'm like, oh, a 2 straight is blue for you. Okay, then you know that's fine. In this way, so that'll be printed on the back of the ship card, or it could be printed on the front of the ship card too, potentially. This would mean here's my argument for it. And this one I'm not digging my feet in about this change. This is one I'm totally more willing to negotiate, because it may be more trouble than it's worth. But the idea is just have a single dial. Everybody's the same dial. It'd still have every maneuver you would need on there. All right, and you could even print maneuvers that don't exist yet, like you know, I don't know, does anybody have a 1K turn printed? A printed 1K turn on their dial right now? I'm not sure. You know, but you know, you could have, you know, maneuvers that don't exist yet on there. But the gains from this would be that setup would be a lot easier. Again, this is probably going to maybe appeal to people that have really large collections, that have all the factions, that that run into difficulty. Hey, it's time for me to play. I'll have to dig through all of this stuff to find the one right piece. Because as you accrue more, and I found this for myself, as I accrue more and more ships, I get more and more waste, more and more tokens, more and more things that are just wasteful. And so when Armada made this change to say, hey, we're not going to give you any more command dials or speed dials, I was like, well, that's great, because I have this giant 5-gallon bag of just all excess. I have like this bucket or this barrel. I just keep throwing things in or this all my excess, and I don't need that. So vultures have it. Okay, vultures have it. But yeah. So everything be printed on the card. So you can still, if you do a hard 3 turn, okay, then you then say, all right, is that green, or rather, is that blue, white, or red, or purple for you, right? And then treat it as such when you reveal it. And of course, if it's a maneuver that you either don't have or is illegal or whatever, you follow the red moves while with stressed or whatever. You do that 2 forward, right? And so yeah, I feel like that would be something like. And again, there may be an easier way to do that, or it may be a decision that just ends up getting shot down, because I see some of you guys in the chat are not particularly big fans of just having like one universal movement dial. But for me personally, that's on my list. That's something that I find more attractive in a game, to have just simpler components and less build specific stuff. Like, that's one thing I really like about Armada also, is there's just one speed dial, and you reference the printed speed profile on each card. And it'd be nice, at least from my perspective, if X-Wing, if they were going to do a different version, had something similar to where it's just a simplicity as far as components. This would be backwards compatible, though, because you could still use your X-Wing specific dial if you wanted to. It would be functionally the same, because you'd still be doing the same maneuvers. You'd still be held to the same rules if you did an illegal maneuver. Yeah. Pre-build your list, or I take one faction to League Night. Yeah, you can certainly build stuff in advance. That's the reasonable thing to do. But I'm just getting lazy. Maybe it's because I'm getting old and cranky. But I get frustrated having so much stuff to dig through. That's one of the reasons why I only play one faction now, as opposed to having access to playing all 7. I'm not willing to go through all of the cardboard and stuff and find, I want to run B-Wings, I want to run Rebel builds, but my Rebel stuff is just in this giant pile, and I sit there and I'm like, do I really want to? Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. It's just too much stuff. So, but that's one, that's just one thing. I've got other things too. So we talked about reprinting the acrylic base, or acrylic bases. It's definitely something they should do. That would be a great way to usher in some fun stuff to go with like a big new change. Pilot upgrades, huge, like, it's a no-brainer to me. I don't know why, pilots are ships and not separate upgrades. Simpler movement dial system. If it's not my solution, I'd be open to suggestions for a different solution for that, but something that just makes, setting up and building your fleets a little easier, and you don't have to carry around all these different dials. But here's another one. Single faction starters. I will reference things that happen in other games, and Armada just did this. They were the first ones to have single faction starters, and it's brilliant. And every game should have this. Doesn't mean that you have to change everything. The single faction starters, and here's how you make it a 2.5 or like a 3.0 without it being a full 3.0. Because everybody's going to want to get the single faction starters, right? You put the single faction starters in there, you give them 3 ships, and you put some new stuff in there too. You could even have 1 new ship and 2 old ships, right? Be very easy to do something like that, or repainted versions, or something like that. So you put those in the new packs. Everybody's going to get them. You're going to have maybe a faction specific damage deck if you wanted to, it would only be, you would just be like one of those ones that they already have, or maybe it's just a standard damage deck. You probably want to do a standard one because you probably want people to go out and buy the faction specific ones. But you have all the new rules, you have all the upgraded cardboard and stuff like that. Any changes that you make, apply them to that particular starter. So everybody's going to have all this stuff. If you need to make changes to like asteroids or anything like that, those are all going to be in there too. But yeah, I see you do this for all 7 factions. Make a single faction starter for all 7 factions to launch alongside the big kind of rollout for any kind of new big rules update. And this includes the Rebels and the Empire. Since they're already featured in the starter, I say no, do that because they're not going to be a squadron pack. Granted, the squadron packs are like single faction starters, but I'm talking about a full-blown new starter. Because there's nothing that says you can't also do squadron packs. And furthermore, I would also do 2-player starters in addition to the single-player starters. I would have a lot more starters. And you could even label them as single faction starter and and also expansion. So this can augment an existing army, or this can be your starting point. The 2-player starters could be, this labeled the same way. But what's good about the 2-player starters is there's a lot of like, I've seen a lot of like dads come up to me, or parents have come up to me and they're like, hey, I have a kid, I'm looking for a game that we can play together, or hey, me and my sister are looking for a game that we can play together, or something like that. And that's why a 2-player starter is a really good idea. And so I think you should have those in addition to having single faction starters. I think that's a good way to go, and it gives you, it's a good opportunity to, like, if you're going to have major rules overhauls, to kind of correct all that stuff, put errata out there. If you're going to be having upgrade card packs also, and that can launch at the same time as all of those. So I would say 7 single faction starters, and then and then have another another classic starter. And maybe your classic starter isn't just an X-Wing versus a TIE Fighter. Maybe your classic starter, or your 2-player starter, is a T-70 versus First Order stuff. Maybe they want the sequel trilogy to do this. Or maybe it's Clone Wars. Clone Wars would probably be a better bet right now, since Bad Batch is out. Clone Wars just did their season 7. A lot of people who are now adults that have disposable income grew up watching Clone Wars and the prequel trilogy and stuff like that. So Clone Wars is hot right now. So this would be a good time to just have Clone Wars be your 2-player starter. In those classic players who want to just get into the game and do Rebels versus Empire or whatever, they already got the original starter, the 2.0 starter. They have a lot of starters out there, and how many of them already have an X-Wing and 2 TIE Fighters in it? Like, too many. So I don't think we need any more X-Wing and 2 TIE Fighter starters. I think it's time for, some more stuff. An ETA 2, versus, a Tri-Fighter and a Vulture Droid. Something like that I think would be a really cool, 2-player starter. I'd like to see it. There's a lot more pilots they could put in there too. So no, that would be a fun way to do it. And it gives you the opportunity to have, more big, like the squadron packs seem popular. They can charge more for them. I think it's just a good move all around. You can charge more for it. People are more likely to want to buy multiples because there may be some cool ship. Maybe there's a new paint job in there they really like. I don't know. Resistance B-Wing when? I play First Order because they have more ships. Yeah, the First Order is getting ready to have a lot more ships, right? We got that new squadron pack coming out for First Order. Apparently, we're going to get some more information on that pack in June. June is when they're planning to release that. It was some of the people who sent me messages and have talked to AMG about it, and they've kind of confirmed that, that wasn't supposed to come out yet. That was supposed to be a June announcement. And, that's kind of cool. I think it definitely seems like they are taking all of the stuff that was supposed to have come out already, and like spreading out that last kind of wave of releases to kind of, instead of all coming out in 1 month, like spreading them out over a year to kind of, otherwise there would be this huge like dead period in between FFG and AMG, and I don't think they want that. I think they want everything to come out little by little, just so it's like it keeps the pulse going, right? Until they can, because there's a big gap in the machine. The cogs kind of got stopped for a while, and we're seeing this all over the place. We went out to eat. A bunch of friends were all vaccinated, and we all went out this weekend to dinner. And like the restaurant was like, just so you know, we're out of a lot of things. There's no chicken wings like anywhere in the state, and we're like, no chicken wings, and like you can't get chicken wings anymore, And it's just interesting seeing the effects of like the assembly line from the production assembly line for all things, not just gaming stuff, but everything else. Got hit by all of this. So it was a good time for FFG to kind of switch things over to AMG when they did. So I think that's pretty interesting. So we'll take some questions, and I'll jump back into the chat here for a little bit. But I think that kind of summarizes most of the changes that I've made. If you just joined in, you missed most of my suggestions. They were terrible suggestions anyway. Well, one or two of them were all right, but all right. Daniel says, what if every ship could do every maneuver, but if it's not on the dial, you take a damage and it stresses the ship? That's a big change. It's a very, very big change. I think that's a good starting point for an idea, because I think there's a lot of ships that could have fun with a rule like that, but there's also a lot of ships that would completely break the game. Like, think about decimators being able to do like a 5k turn, or a 1k turn, or something like that. Like, they would gladly, like, there's decimators would gladly be able to have full maneuverability at the cost of a damage and a stress, especially for moves that were already read to them anyway, right? So I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, granted, I'm not trying to poo-poo your idea. I think it's a good starting point. Like, that's how great ideas happen. Like, think of something cool, and that's kind of what this show, the Double Crit, is all about. It's like, think of something cool, let's talk it out, and see if there's a way that it could actually really work, right? And for something like that, to give everybody access to every maneuver, I think the idea of taking damage is a good starting point, but it would have to ramp up, right? Like, maybe your size class would be a multiplier. If you're a medium ship, you'd take double damage. If you're a large ship, you'd take triple damage, and you'd add 1 to the damage for every like point off from like how far it was away. So if you were like if it's a movement type you didn't have, add 1. If it's a number you didn't have, add 1. And then if you're changing the color, add another 1. So now all of a sudden, if a VT, a decimator wants to do like a 5k, that's going to be like 3 damage times 3, so that's 9 damage for turning around. And all of a sudden now they might not want to do that. Like, maybe that's like the path that I would go down. We got a super chat from Jason Adkins. Thank you, Jason, for the support. Thanks for the super chat, man. I really appreciate it. He says, I've recently got into Armada, Legion, and X-Wing. Whoo! You got yourself in deep. That's what I love to hear. What I love most about X-Wing is that it's super friendly for my 8-year-old. We've been having a blast. I hear you. I think I first showed my oldest son X-Wing when he was about 7 or 8, and he loved it. And I was like super nervous because I'm like, oh, you're gonna break stuff. And I remember being like, oh, you have to be really precise with your movements, because like it's so fun playing with kids, especially a game like this that has very precise movements, because they just want to like kind of push the ships around, and you're like, no, you can't do it like that, So you have to, it helps to play more relaxed, or maybe offer to do the moves for them, So yeah, very, very cool stuff. But thank you for the super chat, brother. I appreciate that very much. Thanks for supporting the channel. We got some questions about the Trident. The Trident, I believe June 18th or 19th is the, let me see, was last I heard. The 18th of June, I think, is the current release date for the Trident. That's one that, I mean, honestly, we're getting close. We're almost a month out, and we haven't even seen an article for that. Like, it was talked about in the live stream, but like, we haven't gotten any kind of previews on it yet. We know a little bit about it. It was supposed to be, AI for it. And, so you can run it, you can play it as yourself. You can run AI. It's going to be Scum, and it's going to be Separatists. Makes me wonder, is the Republic going to be getting any more huge ships? Like, I want to do it. Like, the next Double Critical we do is going to be all about Epic playing huge ships also. So stay tuned for that. If you guys haven't heard already, the schedule for Double Critical is going to be Sunday nights. And the first Sunday of each month is going to be Armada. The second Sunday of each month is going to be Legion. And the third Sunday of each month is going to be X-Wing. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So, yeah, next month we'll be talking about more huge ships for X-Wing. You can put your questions in the chat. And, if you're watching this after the fact, don't forget to leave a comment, like and subscribe and share and do all of that stuff. We've got a lot more Double Critical stuff. This is a show that I originally created for Legion. So all of the Season 1 Double Criticals were all Legion based. And I decided I wanted to kind of spread that out to all the other games. And it's about kind of speculating, hey, could this work? Is this too much? How could something that seems outrageous, like adding a Double Critical on a die, how could that work in something like X-Wing? Like, what if you were to give somebody the ability, like, to roll a Double Critical? How would that even work in X-Wing, right? So would you add a new die? Maybe maybe there's this Ace Pilot, the special ship that comes with its own die. So it's got an extra little compartment in the blister packet. It comes with a special, like a purple die that has the chance for a Double Critical on there, right? Like, maybe there's a Force die. Maybe you spend a Force to roll a Double Critical die. It has a chance for a Double Critical. Like, that'd be really cool. I would love to see something like that in X-Wing. And so that's, that would be a fun one to just talk about how to make a Double Critical. For a long time, I wanted to have new dice for X-Wing. Originally the whole Force mechanic for X-Wing was supposed to be a dice-based mechanic as opposed to just being tokens. And so they changed that. The fourth Sunday is off. Yes, and or reserved for whatever I want to do. If there's another game that comes out, or if I want to live stream a video game, or do some kind of interactive, whatever. But it might just be a Sunday off. Yeah, sometimes sometimes I just have a slump and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna play video games tonight. Been playing some video games lately. I beat Resident Evil 8 today, so. And I'm going to start on Mass Effect after. So that's the Mass Effect. Because I never played all of the Mass Effect games. I only played the first one when they came out. So I've got a lot of catching up to do. So, I do play video games too. And if more Star Wars games coming out too, I sometimes stream Squadrons. I haven't played Squadrons in a while. But yeah, so that's another fun one. Battlefront. Oh, yeah. Battlefront's not bad. I never did good at it. I have a huge problem with the way they do elite access and stuff in Battlefront 2, because you have to do really, really well to unlock, to earn enough points to be able to get like Luke Skywalker or Darth Maul or one of these heroes, and then it's first come, first serve. So whoever's already the best now has access to the best character. So it's got a runaway leader problem. And if you're doing poorly and you really need the help, you'll be lucky if you get enough points by the end of the game, and he's already going to be taken. Like the one time I actually got Luke Skywalker in a game, I was like, oh, I finally got Luke, and the game ended like 3 seconds later. I didn't even get to didn't even get to attack anybody. So, I usually shoot for about 8 p.m. Eastern, thereabouts. It's probably a little later, about 8:15. So starting around 8 is when the window for Double Critical Live is kind of gonna happen. I may kind of lock it into like an 8:15 or an 8:30 kind of scenario too, because we have to get the kids to bed, and sometimes that can be a little bit difficult on a weekend. But yeah, so that's certainly something that happens. So I'm going to kind of just summarize and talk about the things that we talked about today. I think clearly the way to go for X-Wing 3rd edition is to not call it 3rd edition. I think to do a big rules reference update, like take all the things that you want to fix in a 3rd edition, find a way to make them still compatible with all the product everybody owns for 2nd edition, and then just call it a rules update. Do a soft kind of rules update, call it 2.5, like how Armada did. The second thing is, whenever you roll out these changes, also announce that you're going to do the plastic, the acrylic bases. We need those back. We need those brought back into the game. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. We need the small bases and the large bases like we used to have. We also need the medium bases. We don't have medium bases in those extra acrylic formats. And then the huge ships could get some, if you want to do the colored versions also. This third Sunday in June is Father's Day. Well, see, in that case, I might, I don't know what's going on for Father's Day. I might still stream. I'll put it out on social media if I'm going to be punting to the following June, but I think we'll probably still try and do a live stream for Father's Day. I don't see why not. I don't know if that many people will watch, but they can watch afterwards. So I'm going to still shoot for that. But thank you, D Diablo, for the heads up. And that's kind of a good reason to have that floating fourth one, because if something comes up, I can always push back. If we have to cancel, we have to cancel. Like, that's what, and life just is that way. Play Vader as a bat rep. Well, I might do that, Yeah. Against Luke. Oh, that's a good idea. X-Wing 3, is that confirmed? If you're just joining us, no. So if you're just joining us, Double Crit is a show I started about Legion, where we take ideas and try to figure out, is there a way that this could work? This might sound crazy, but what's a more realistic approach? And so with 3.0, I think 3.0 would be a little bit absurd right now. I don't think we'll actually see a third edition for something like X-Wing for at least 10 years, if not longer. Just because the burn was so bad. There's so many people scorned by second edition. So I think the path forward is any changes you'd like to make in 3.0, apply them to like a 2.5. Just do a big rules update, make all the changes. Hyperspace and the online points and stuff already allow for so much of this. Take advantage of that system that you built, put all your big rules changes, make it a 2.5. Armada did this with a 1.5 rule set and changed to a living rules reference guide. Works out great. People didn't have to buy anything new. There was not backlash. It was no problem. It's no problem at all. That's kind of how you do a 3.0. You do a 2.5 instead. Would there be any changes for Epic integration? I don't see any right now. But I think you need to get some more Epic. What I would like is for more Epic tournaments. I would like more Epic tournament play. I think that would be a lot more fun. I'd like to see, just more of a widespread, actual or organized play for Epic. And it doesn't even have to be maybe tournaments, but just more organized play. And AMG is pretty good on this from what I've seen. Because here's the problem. The way FFG always did things, organized play pretty much means tournaments. Whereas it should, like if I were in charge, I would like to focus on the play part of organized play. So in other words, hey, special event going on this way, next month, like let's say we're going to host a nationwide or a worldwide event in July. We'll say in July, where everybody, get together at your local game store. We're going to be giving out promos. Everybody who plays a game of Epic and meets these criteria, you have at least one huge ship, or you have at least one wing tool, and blah blah blah. You're going to get this promo. Everybody who also is running at least one large ship will get this other promo. And so you give all these stores enough to give everybody like up to 3 promos. You have all these different criteria, and you get people playing, and just have people sign up and they get their game in, and so you basically, it should be an opportunity. It's like, I know if I go to my store this coming Sunday because there's an organized play event, I'm gonna get a game in and I'm gonna get some cool promos. And that should be something that organized play also does, as opposed to only tournaments. And so that would be something I would do if I were in charge of like a big kind of 3.0 rollout or a 2.5 rollout. Joe says need to reprint the Gazanti and some of the other ships. We don't have to pay the prices online. Yeah, that's another thing, and we haven't talked about that with the 3.0. Is you got to get all those old ships reprinted. I mean, dude, why isn't there an attack shuttle yet? I mean, obviously COVID has something to do with a lot of these delays, and of course the changeover from FFG to AMG. Um, you know, would you want to see a worldwide shared narrative to support OP? Well, yeah, that sounds great. I think that's kind of what they did with this the mini extravaganza. They had those on their website. Sorry, I had to sneeze, so I muted my mic so you guys wouldn't hear my outrageously awful sneeze. But yeah, and yeah, but basically, I think that's kind of what they were doing is like these worldwide, narrative events. The problem with some of that is it's like, all right, it's like the honor system. It's like, hey, play a game and then just submit the results, and that'll help steer the narrative for this particular promo that we're gonna make. Well, I could just say I just won that. Like, there's no vetting for that. I mean, this is not really much of a criticism. It's just that type of event appeals a little bit less to me. I'm more, and granted, during a global pandemic, that's probably the best you can do. So, I mean, kudos to them for trying to do stuff like that. That's cool. But moving forward, especially since we're starting to see more and more people get vaccinated, we're starting to see restrictions start to relax. It's not going to be back to normal overnight, but we're taking steps towards returning to some of the things that we used to do. Playing in stores is becoming more of a reality. So I would love to see an organized play that has emphasis on people all going to the store and playing each other. Because that's what these games are about. Is getting minis on the table and looking at this cool freaking setup and then taking pictures and posting them to Instagram and stuff like that. Like that's for me, that's what these games are all about. Is just having this beautiful tabletop cinematic experience. That's I love that. I love that about these games, and I love that we're getting closer to being able to do it again. We're getting pretty close to wrapping up. So again, big things is 3.0 should be called basically a 2.5. It should just be a rules update. Shouldn't require any new purchases. You can launch some new starters, single faction starters for every single faction, and also a new 2-player starter too. Maybe a Clone Wars themed 2-player starter. That would be good additional entry points into players. I think it's absurd that a game with 7 factions requires you to buy an X-wing and TIE fighter to get started. Now, granted, I get that there are a la carte things, but that means if you don't want to buy that starter, now your cost to entry is going to be over $100 because you got to buy all these other little things. You got to find them in different places. Sometimes things are out of print or whatever. So, actually, I don't know if it's over $100. I haven't done all the math on every individual piece, but the point is, that's not a way to get people started in a game. You don't want to you don't want to be that kind of game that's like, all right, you can get started, but you got to buy these 7 different expansions, and they're all from different places, and we're out of stock on 4 of them, so you're gonna have to find them on eBay. You just want a box that you just like, here's your starter. You can get started with this kit. And if you're going to have a big rules update, it's good to periodically come out with new starters. It doesn't have to be X-Wing and 2 TIE fighters. It could be some Clone Wars ships. It could be even First Order versus Resistance at some point. I would do Clone Wars now, and I would wait a couple years for the time, like for the next big rules update, which might happen a couple years down the road, and maybe that one could be First Order Resistance or Mandalorian based, Mando and other shows that are coming out, Bad Batch and all the other stuff. Who knows what the next big hype in Starfighter combat is going to be 5 years from now. So there's going to be a lot of new options for other 2-player starters. So I think that's a great way to go. But every faction needs its own starter also. And I also toyed around with the idea of saying, let's get rid of ship-specific movement dials and let's just have a generic movement dial that has every move on it, but you have to reference your ship's actual movement capability. There could be a lot of different ways to do this. Some of the people in the chat weren't so crazy about that idea, and I recognize that sounds like maybe a bridge too far for a lot of people. But if I were in charge of like prototyping, I'd probably have 2 or 3 different options out there and see. I'd love to present it in a better way. Like maybe movement dials just have like numbers on them, 1 through 20, and on your ship card it says, okay, well, number 1 is a 1 straight, number 2 is a 2 straight, and things like that. maybe that could also, take away from the thematics. I think the current movement dial system right now is very intuitive to new players. The only problem I have with it is that we end up having so many movement dials, especially as your collection grows and grows and grows. You're like digging through this bag trying to find, oh, where's my YT1300 dial? I can't find it. I've had so many times where I was missing like a Lambda shuttle dial, and I'm digging through this, and so I hate that. And that's one of the things I love about certain other games where you just, like Armada, you just have one speed dial, or you just have one, basically cardboard dial for movement, and then you follow the instructions on your ship card to how to interpret that speed, which is brilliant. So I would love to see if there was a way to do that with X-Wing, at least as an option. Like, you could also still use the ship specific, and that's the thing. I'm not invalidating any of the 2.0 stuff. I'm just giving you simpler options, because that would mean if you had a really large collection, maybe you only need to have, between 3 and 8 movement dials on standby, and you can just grab them for every build you want to run, and so you don't have to be digging through stuff all the time. And also, the biggest thing is getting rid of ship specific cards with the pilots baked into them. As we see now, pilots should be an upgrade that goes on a ship, and this way you could just use any cardboard token that has the right printed firing arc, which all pilots have the same printed firing arc for any given ship. So like, there's no reason to have a separate cardboard shit for Wedge Antilles, and for Biggs Darklighter, and for Luke Skywalker, and for Red Squadron Veteran, and all these other stuff. You don't need all of that. So yeah, those are kind of like my big basic suggestions, the big things that we talked about for how to do a 3.0. Biggest point: don't call it a 3.0. All right, you guys, and that's going to be about it. If you guys didn't already hear, be sure to check out Luxury Playstyle. Big thanks to Luxury Playstyle for sponsoring this video. Head over there, use code Crabbok VIP. You're going to save 15%. You're also going to get a free Crabbok Lightsaber Nunchuck token on any order of $35 or more. And while supplies last, we've got Legion tokens in the works. I'll be working on designing those with Luxury Playstyle, so check that out. Great tokens over there for a lot of different games too. So check them out. But very fun stuff. That's about all I've got for you guys. Big thanks to all my patrons as well for supporting the channel. You guys are awesome, and you definitely keep the channel going. Thank you for your continued support. Thanks for everybody who hung out in the chat today, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much, and as always,